Yeah, I see
Stay
Clint.
away.
I see Clint has already logged in. Hi, Clint.
And I see
We need
Travis
to
is
see
logging in
you.
too.
We need to see you.
Can you see
What?
me?
What? Mm,
Yes,
Uh,
yes, we can.
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Wellington, you saw my note that you're going to lose a lot of people at 3.
I'm going to address it.
Yes.
I'm going to address it right now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. No, I just.
We will try our best to finish by 3.
How you guys doing?
Yeah, we will. We will
Hi,
be done by
Travis.
3.
How
So
are you?
I'm well.
good, good, good. So I see Travis is here, and I
Yeah.
see
Clint
Clint
is there, and it's 2. We
and
should
it's
start.
2. We are starting. So
Yes.
good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Most of you know me, but my name is Wellington Hepburn. I'm the president of Wellington Hepburn International, which is a local consulting company that provides a variety of different services. And I'd like to welcome you to our 3rd event in our Corona Collaboration Culture Series, which is called Communicating in Crisis, Fake News, Grapevines, and Employees. It's going to be a good discussion. So before I hand it over to Banu, Clint, and Travis, a couple guidelines that I just want to share. So I want to welcome all local participants from the Bahamas. I also want to welcome any international participants. On the last 2 calls, we would have had participants from the US, Spain, Malaysia, Alaska, the UK, and also Tanzania, East Africa. So, you know, we welcome you.
And one from Spain. Yeah, one from Spain.
And Spain also, absolutely. So we want to welcome you to our session. A couple guidelines before I hand it over to Banu. So the first is that we are adjusting the meeting time. The flyer, as you can clearly see, says 3:30, but we found out after promoting our event that the Prime Minister wants to give a national address at 3. So as a courtesy, we're cutting the event at 3. The second is if you wish to make a comment, you can temporarily unmute your Zoom by pressing space if you're using a computer. If you're on the phone, I think it might be another way to do that. I want to also mention to you that we have an interview segment with Clint and Travis. And then after that segment, we have a portion where we take questions from you. So during that portion, you can type your questions in the chat, or you can just unmute your mic and you know, insert your question into the conversation so that we can give you an answer. And lastly, but not least, just want to make you aware that this is being recorded. It will be featured on the Wellington Hepburn International website and YouTube, and we may use it for continuing to advance the brand. Okay, over to you, Banu.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for making time on a Sunday afternoon to be with us. My name is Banu Devi Nair, as Wellington has mentioned earlier. So I'm the Director of Academic Affairs with the One Ilutra Foundation. So just a very quick note to introduce One Ilutra Foundation. It's a community development non-profit that helps organizations succeed by connecting them to resources. Like we do things like training, you know, expertise on funding and technical support. So what we do basically is integral in facilitating the implementation of the key sustainable development goals in the Bahamas. So I will share more with you at the end of the session. So if you have more questions, you can ask later. So that's me from One Ilutra Foundation. Over to you, Wellington.
Indeed, indeed. So let's hear briefly from Clint and Travis before we get into me explaining a little bit about this series. So Clint, you can go first. You can introduce yourself.
Great. Welcome, everybody. My name is Clint Watson, the news director here at Eyewitness News, which is, I call us the new kid on the block. We've been operating our news service for perhaps maybe about May 16th will make about 2 years, I think it'll be. Already, 2 years exactly that we've been in operation. I'm happy to say that despite being in operation in 2 years, we have been able to make ourselves and climb ourselves to the top of what we do in broadcast news. And so we're excited about being able to do that and to be in that spot as far as with news and information. Prior to doing Eyewitness News, I worked with the state-run Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas for 13 years. And prior to that, about 2 years with Island FM radio and cable channel 12. And then prior to that, about a year with More FM radio. So it's been pretty much about 20 years, a little over 20 years
Wow.
doing broadcasting and loving what it is that I do and being able to keep people informed here in the country, in the Bahamas.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Clint. Thank you. Over to you, Travis.
Good afternoon. Clint, I didn't know you were in media that long.
He's a veteran, Travis.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I know he's a veteran. Yeah. Okay. My name is Travis Cartwright Carroll. I'm the assistant news editor at the Nassau Guardian. We've been around a while. I've been in media about 8 or 9 years, give or take. I spent a year in tourism. I essentially help organize our coverage with the paper. And right now, this has been quite a different experience because we've been, like many other people, been doing it from home. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely a spin on how to operate business, eh?
For sure.
Indeed, indeed. So let me talk a little bit just about the series that we're doing. So, and perhaps I could bring this flyer up. I had intended to bring it up at the end, but now is a good time.
Yeah.
So WHI, and in partnership with OEF, Juana Luthra Foundation, we have facilitated 2 sessions so far, the April 5th and the April 12th session, and today we're doing Communicating in Crisis. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because the world has shifted. Not just the Bahamas, the globe has shifted in terms of how we interact, in terms of how we transact, and in terms of how businesses operate. And from our perspective, we've coined this movement as the Corona Collaboration Culture Movement. There's a greater movement toward digital transformation, remote teams, virtual work, online productivity. And the reality is we've only seen the beginning of it. It is going to get much more accelerated, much more intense, and much more integrated. So to help us to get ahead of this curve, WHI, and for some sessions, OEF, have developed a curriculum of sorts to talk about some of these topics now. How do we manage productivity in virtual teams? How do we resolve conflict in virtual teams? How do we manage our health? You know, I see some advertisements online for yoga through Zoom.
Yoga, yeah.
You know, this is a new world that we are in. And the only way that we can operate effectively in it is if we have knowledge, because knowledge is the starting point for wisdom. So this series will highlight certain key topics that we want to educate the Bahamian and international community on. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right. So how about I get us started with the first question, and perhaps I start with Clint. So, you know, Clint, this whole topic of communicating in crisis is very interesting to me. I've been a public speaker for the past 13, 14 years. So I communicate kind of differently than you and Travis, but still it's communication. So in what ways would you say is communication in a crisis a critical organizational function? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure, I think it's essential. After all, I often tell people you measure the strength of a company simply by its ability to navigate through challenges, navigate through difficult times. It's very easy for companies to navigate when they have it all together and they're operating based on their standard operating procedures and they're doing what it is that they've been created to do. But
Yes.
when you have challenges or when there's crisis and you have to still effectively deliver that same level of service, that same level, that same product with the same quality, then it proves the strength and magnitude of your company. So it is with crisis, particularly for communications networks. Your ability to get people through a difficult time without panic, without worry, without frustration, but giving them the information and the facts that they need to make important and informed decisions shows the strength of your communication network, shows the strength of your ability to do what it is that you've been asked to do effectively. Companies ought to be able to measure their success during crisis. And that, of course, comes from having a plan. You see people, most companies say, okay, we have our plan in the event of a crisis. This is what we do in the event of disaster. This is how we manage it. And it should be more than just a format on paper, but it should be a routine that people can easily slip into that mode and into that operation should the need arise without having to figure out, does this actually work? It ought to be able to click into the machinery mechanism mode that allows people to effectively deliver the same kind of communication ability that they would have been doing if you were not in crisis mode. And so your ability to be able to do that obviously comes from preparation. It obviously comes from having experience in working this plan, not just saying, let's wait for the first crisis to come and see if it works, but actually having tested it and recognizing that if we have to go to this mode, we are certain that this is a plan that's going to work. So not only having a plan on paper, but having executed that plan before to know that it will work for you, and know that the people that you have to execute it with understand it and how to effectively deliver the kind of results that you need.
Yeah, yeah. As I listen to you, I have to smile because I you know, and on this webcast, we don't want to call any names, but you know, I can think of some organizations who have not taken that stance. They've taken the stance of silence. They've taken the stance of non-communicating, you know, which is just so interesting.
And oftentimes that comes from fear. Oftentimes when you see people not communicate, it's because it's an uncomfortable place to be in when you're not sure how to go about it or what to do with it. And so the easiest thing to do is just ignore it and thinking it will go away, which it never does.
Absolutely. Travis, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what Clint said, but.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Clint. It is essential that you have communication in a time like this because there's so much misinformation out there. Mm-hmm. And as an organization, really, this is the time to adapt. And I think everyone is adapting. For us at The Guardian, we have really redoubled our efforts on social media and putting out our content as we get it. And that's one of the changes that we've done. So this is definitely a time to adapt. And as you were pointing out, you know, going dark now is not a good sign because so many people are hearing, you know, this story and that story. You need to have accurate information. You need to have information from the source, so to speak.
Yes, yes. There's something that I say, and it's kind of a mantra of mine. If you don't control the message, someone else will control it. So getting ahead of it's important.
And I think the other areas, I mean, everything, it's new for everyone. So this pandemic and the lockdown is something that, you know, we've never experienced in the past.
Yeah.
So for many of the organizations, so what is it that I do is not something that's normal. So to me, I feel probably that could be something. And my question to you, Clinton and Travis, so what are the key aspects of effective crisis communication, if I ask you? So is there sort of like a guideline of what is it that you should do?
Obviously,
sorry.
Go ahead, Travis. Go ahead.
Yeah, Travis.
I think, I mean, the basic tenets of what we do, of what Clint and I are supposed to do, or what we do, is you want to be accurate, right? You want to present accurate information. You want to present the information that's up to date. This is important for anything that comes out of any of the addresses, the national addresses, any of the orders that are sent out, information that is easily digestible. And we see that the government is also taking that task. They're putting flyer explain some of the orders that they're doing, but it's also in time to show that you're highlighting the stories of people. And I think that is an important aspect of a crisis because in times like this, it is so easy to forget people who are less fortunate and who really are suffering. Mm-hmm. And it's important to put the spotlight on them and their concern.
Yeah. Just so you know, Travis, I think your video might be frozen. Your audio sounds fine.
Yeah, audio is fine, but yeah, the video seemed frozen.
Yeah. Oh, it just came back in. Just came back in.
All right.
Okay. Where did I get cut off?
No, your audio was fine. It's just that your video.
Yeah.
So it's fine. We heard you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's critical that we, you know, it's important to highlight what the politicians are saying, what the prime minister is saying, but it is critical to not forget those who have no avenue of expressing themselves or you know, I mean, we go to social services. I mean, everyone has been doing it and talking to folks and reaching out to people who they were unemployed before this. And now they're forced to stay home. And some of them have 3, 4 kids, and they don't know how they're going to feed those kids. And so it's important to highlight that.
Absolutely. Clint, did
Clint,
you want to add anything?
your
Yeah.
view on this?
Sure, just adding to what Travis has said, because everything he said there is correct. Adding to it is an action plan. I always tell my staff, it's important to tell people what is it that you need to be able to do as a result of this information. Particularly in crisis modes. What does the public need to know? What action should they be taking? Particularly in natural disasters like hurricanes or like what we're facing now with coronavirus. Telling people wash hands, stay indoors, social distance. What does social distance really mean? Practically physical distance is what you're trying to say. So you might mean having to take the term social distance and breaking it down for people and saying, it simply means keep your physical distance from people. Action plan, always giving people an action plan so that they get the information and they know what to do with the information. Because oftentimes we talk about people's levels and understanding. We talk and people are not even understanding, what am I supposed to do with all of this information? You're giving me a lot of material. What am I supposed to do with this? Action plan, being able to tell people, here's what you need to do. Here's what you should be listening to. Here's where you need to be, so that people can effectively get the information and utilize the information so we can have a desired outcome.
Yeah, I find this just so exhilarating. And the reason why is that I see the direct impact that it has when it's done well, and also when it's not done well. Direct impact on individuals' lives. Now, here's an interesting question. I know that both you, Clint, and Travis kind of operate in slightly different spaces. So, Clint, your company operates primarily in, I think it's called broadcast or like video media.
Correct. Broadcast, digital.
Broadcast, digital. And I know, Travis, your company is primarily more in the printed media space.
But we're very diverse.
And they're online too.
And you are online.
We're diverse, but we have radio news, and we have a partnership with Cable Bahamas that does the Hour News segment. But yes, I am primarily in print.
Okay, yeah. No, good correction. So when you think about those two different spaces, when communicating in a crisis, do the protocols differ? Like, is there anything more that you need to consider, Clint, or anything more that you need to consider, Travis? And you could probably get us started, Clint.
I think pretty much they're the same fundamental things: accurate information, fact checking, making sure you go to air with the correct information, checking more than one source for information that you're checking on. They're the same in both mediums. Where I think we do differ is broadcast obviously deals with time. Print, you have a little more space, and it's not always immediate unless you're using a digital platform. So I think for broadcast, we have to remember that we have to get it all in a shorter span of time.
Yes.
We don't have the length that a printed article may have. So you've got 2 minutes to tell a whole story. You think about a press conference that may be an hour long. You have 2.5 minutes to tell that story in the newscast. So finding out what's the most important thing people need to know right now and getting that into that 2.5 minute story. So it requires a skill of being identified what are the most important things that are being said and not get cluttered with all of the information, but picking out what is relevant. Also important to understand in broadcast is what is the newest thing, right? In broadcast, it's all about what is the most recent thing. What is the new thing that's coming in? Printed media, you see a lot of their stories have a lot of background information. After they give you the new thing, they then go and tell you, well, you would have remembered last week XYZ took place. Broadcast, you don't have that kind of time. So you stick to the most recent thing, the most immediate thing in disseminating the information.
Travis?
I mean, I would say that rule generally applies for print media as well. You pad your story like a pyramid. You put the new information at the top and you go down, and your background's at the end. But Clint is right. Deadline is definitely on our side in some respects. I could write a story and I could file it 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and it'll be in tomorrow's paper. Clint, those have to be on the air by 7. So everything should really be done by 6:30. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, I mean, one very interesting point, I would say. These days, even before it comes out in the news, it comes out in social media. So
Yes.
that brings me to my question.
Yes, it
So
does.
to what extent is the role of social media valid in crisis situation?
I mean, for us, we've been adapting to that. So we've been putting out our stories as we write them as it happens. So if there's something that happens at 1 o'clock, we'll try and get it out as soon as possible, 1:15, 1:30. Social media is a double-edged sword. So it's a great way to put out information. It's a great way to get your message out. It's also filled with a lot of falsehoods. And you know, as the topic of this is, you know, fake news, which is an interesting term, right? But it's filled with rumors and misinformation and people who may not have the best intention. It's very important that you answer that and that you put out information that is vital for people. The alphabet schedule, for instance, getting that out there. The orders that the prime minister did, again, as I mentioned, getting that out there. So it's important to put out the accurate information, and it's important that you have a presence as well, that people know that, hey, this news organization has accurate information, has timely information.
Clint?
I totally agree with him in the fact that, in particularly, social media is helpful because you can get information out to the people right away.
Right away.
Without social media, before we'd have to wait till a 7 o'clock newscast to get information out. For Travis, they'll have to wait till the newspaper prints the next morning to get information out. With social media, you can get the information right from the event and get it out in a matter of seconds, so that people have what they need to make an informed move or decision right away. So in that case, it's been very beneficial to get information out right away. People who traditionally may not pick up a newspaper or turn into a station to watch news, they may go on Facebook or go on Instagram or Twitter, and you're able, because you have platforms there, to get your information to them. So they don't have to no longer come to you. You can go to where their playground is and still get the information to them. Like Travis said, it has its negatives as well, because social media is a playground for fake news. And so oftentimes you find yourself competing with networks or organizations and sites that are not traditional news organizations or credible news organizations, and people think they are. And so you're fighting to get your story out, which is accurate. Theirs is full of sensationalism, and people are trying to balance which is correct, which is true. And you often find people going to these fake media sites to get information, and then coming back to you and saying, but they said, and you're saying, well, we're credible. Here is the truth. So you find yourself having to incorporate them now into your everyday workflow, because they shape the way people think. So you can't ignore that they're there. Your job is to now almost play cops and robbers. You got to be the cop to go out there and arrest the robbers who are out there doing something wrong. And so while you can't ignore them, you've got to now recognize they're in your playground. How do you police them to make sure that people get accurate information?
But I know that's tough, because these days, I mean, it looks so real, because the way how the fake news comes, it looks so real. It's like, we have to ask ourselves, is it really true? Is this fake news? Or, you know, I got into trouble in that sense for forwarding something, and it's like, that's fake news. Why are you sending that out? It's like, it looks new. It looks like from CNN.
It looks legitimate.
Right. I think just to add to that, you know, the WhatsApp has been an issue here as well, because that's really how a lot of folks are spreading the message. And as Clint said, a lot of folks are getting their information primarily from Facebook, and there's a lot of inaccurate information on there. People have family groups, and I'm sure everyone here has it. And there are some people that will forward anything you send to them. And they will forward and that's how it spreads. And it's hard, you know, we can't compete with that kind of spread, you know, because it's so rapid, you know what I mean? But we have to balance being first and being accurate.
Right.
And this has been a problem that, you know, other jurisdictions have faced. I think we are now having to face that as well. Do you want to be first, or do you want to be right?
Yeah.
And that's also a problem.
Yeah, this is interesting. Now, you know, I've heard both of you say the term fake news. We've talked about it. And it's interesting because you even hear the authorities use it. You hear President Trump use it almost daily.
Yeah.
You've heard Prime Minister Menace reference it several times.
Yes.
And you know, you've talked about how it's in your playground. How do you manage it? How do you mitigate it? What do you do to, I guess, to suppress the impact of fake news and kind of elevate what the Guardian and Eyewitness News has to say?
Well, you can't suppress fake news. The only thing you can do is, I always tell people, the only thing that outlives a lie is the truth, right? So you just continue to just push facts, push facts. And eventually people recognize at some point that people who are disseminating fake news, they eventually see the loophole in it, and they recognize it. Because a lot of times fake news has a lot of sensationalism with it.
Yeah.
And so people kind of are able to see through it when you see somebody that has an agenda behind what it is they do. But do you ever beat it? I don't think you can. I think the only thing you can do is continue to be honest and have integrity in what it is you put out there, and just hope that people will trust your credibility in the business to know that when you put something out there, it's true and it's accurate, and leave all of the propaganda to those people who are going to just be out there. You can't get rid of them. They're going to be there no matter what. That comes with a democratic society with freedom of speech. People just, you can't get away. People are entitled to do what they want to do and say what they want to say. And the only thing you can do is push every day to people to get your news and information from credible sources, because those people are going to be out there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to erase them.
To erase it.
All you can do is channel people to the right sources.
Yeah.
Travis? Yeah.
I have a weird relationship with that term fake news, because it's primarily used to discredit journalists in other regions.
Yes.
China has used it against the New York Times for stories that they've done, accurate stories based off Chinese documents that they did not like. So they said, oh, that's fake news. And obviously, as you said, we have a neighbor to the north who kind of basically coined that term.
Yeah.
And so it's a very strange term. We use it here primarily to refer to stories that are inaccurate, or not. I shouldn't say stories, because they're really referring to rumors and information that's on social media and etc. As Glenn said, we can't defeat this beast because it's primarily about the people. And as a person, you have to decide, well, where am I going to get my information from? How am I going to, and also, do I spread information without verifying it?
Yeah.
When I was in COB, right, when it was called COB, my English professors told me Wikipedia is not a source because anybody could put information on Wikipedia.
Yes, exactly.
So, I always laugh when I hear someone citing Wikipedia as a source, because I go, there you go.
There you go.
As a news organization, we have to put out, truthful and accurate information. If we make a mistake, we will put out a correction. We will admit that we did, and we will move forward and strengthen the systems to ensure that that doesn't happen. That's the difference between what we do and what, someone on Facebook will do. And they will fight you that their story is right, by the way.
I've seen it.
So yeah, it's strange how everybody a lot of people are so taken by information that's not right. And I don't know why we as a people are so susceptible to it, why we don't question it. Yeah. And this is why it's so important for us to be critical thinkers, because you have to question everything these days,
I also, to add to what Travis has said, I wondered if there is a real commitment to stop fake news, because we would have heard at the beginning of the Prime Minister's emergency order declaration that one of the things they put in place was that if you are responsible for disseminating fake news, you can face consequences before the law. Yeah. We're yet to see that happen, right? Yeah. And they were so adamant about it. It was something that the Speaker of the House of Assembly followed up with and saying, I'm happy that we now have this. But we've been months into this crisis, exactly. And we're yet to see anybody go before the courts for fake news, right? We've yet to see anybody. So it makes you wonder, at what point are you going to be able to measure the accuracy that you can go to somebody and say, listen, you put out fake news, we're going to take you before the courts. We don't see it happening. On the flip side, I often tell people be cautious of politicians that use the word fake news, because sometimes politicians call something fake simply because they don't want people to know that it's true, or they don't want people to believe that it's out there, or they're not prepared for it to be out there just yet. So they label it as fake news, hoping that people would dismiss it when there is accuracy to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's very important, you know, you should be troubled when you see the state persecuting the press.
Mm-hmm.
And that terminology, fake news, sounds a lot like lying press, which is
Mm-hmm.
what Hitler used to call the press,
Yeah.
or press that he didn't like. So it's, I mean, you have to be very careful with
Yeah.
terminology.
I have a follow-up question to my original question, and I'll be the first to admit, and I'm being recorded, that I've done it.
Oh,
How do you? No. Let me explain what the it is first.
okay.
So you get something on WhatsApp. You may not fully validate whether it's a legitimate document. You take it as a legitimate document and you forward it. And I don't know if maybe we're in this era where we want people to know, because I know I've done it unknowingly. And people have written me back and it's like, well, are you sure this is true? And then when you look at it, it's like, oh, geez, well, no, this is a document from Jamaica or something. So what advice would you give to us, I guess, just, regular citizens in terms of how to validate this information? Like, what would your advice be? Because I know I've done it unknowingly.
Well,
I think I've done it too. So let me admit.
like I've told people all the time, particularly if it's a government document with some policy or change, it more than all of the time, most likely, it will come on some official seal or letterhead or logo from the government. So if you don't see that, chances are it's not true, right? It's not authentically from that government agency. Now, it can't mean that somebody couldn't have just copied it and sent it around. It could be true as well. But I always tell people to look for official seals and logos to determine its authenticity. Also check and verify. There's nothing wrong calling a media house or calling a government agency and saying, listen, I see something going around saying X, Y, Z. Is this true? It's always good to check. Google online, for example, with these agencies, and most of the time if there's something circulating, they've put it on their site already, or they've put it in their documents. So it's just a matter of fact checking to see where things are coming from. A lot of times if you fact check it before circulating it, you'll have a better idea of whether it's authentic or not.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Clint that fact check is a very important term for journalism.
Okay, I mean, we've spoken a lot about social media and fake news and stuff. So coming to my next question. So how can social media and crisis communication work best, do you think? Maybe Clint, or Travis, you can go first. How does the two work best, do you think?
Instant information getting out.
Mm-hmm.
When you're dealing with a crisis, you want to get the information to the people as soon as possible and reach as much people as possible. Social media allows you to do that. You can get a message to them. For example, when the Prime Minister announced he was having a press conference, they put the flyer out, and that went, one person circulated in their group, next person circulated in their group. Before you know it, the country knows the Prime Minister is having a press conference because people circulate the information. And you're able to get the information out right away. So that's important for crisis communications, that you can get information out to the people and to a lot more people than you could in just your medium platform.
Yeah, I agree. I think to piggyback on that, not just putting out the flyer, but the Prime Minister has taken the tack to hold his press conferences live on social media. Mm-hmm. They're streamed on all the major news stations, but they're on his platforms on Facebook as well. So you're getting the information real time. It's also important to, as I mentioned earlier, it's a good avenue to tell the stories of those who are in need, those who are hurting. Not just in this pandemic, we do it in the hurricanes as well. This is the situation on this island. This is what happened on Abaco. This is what happened on Grand Bahama. I mean, I still remember the first images out of Abaco, particularly the aerial images of that damage and the destruction there. So it's a great, as Clint said, instantaneous avenue to get the information out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right,
absolutely. My next question, I think both of you have covered, so I'll move on to the other one. So we've talked about crisis communication broadly, broad, far-reaching crisis in the Bahamian community, or even larger. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about crisis communication within organizations. what would you say are the top 3 elements that an employer needs to consider when communicating with their employees in a crisis? Travis, you could get us started.
What's the context for that question, per se? I'm curious.
Yeah, the context would be, I've been in HR for a while, and I've seen where some organizations have very concerted and very dedicated communication platforms, plans, and when a crisis kicks in, they just snap right into play.
Yeah.
And I've seen other organizations where they just don't even see the significance of it. So in terms of, I guess, giving maybe some tips or guides in terms of
I think it's important to have a communications officer in every workplace, not just to communicate with, to do marketing and to communicate with the press and so on, but also to communicate with your staff in conjunction with HR. I would look at like a lot of small businesses here, shoe stores, clothing stores, etc. I'm sure there are a lot of employees who are uncertain of what's going to happen to them. Are we going to continue operating? Am I going to have a job in 3 months? That's important to. I think the most important thing is to have a line of communication with your employees, whether it's an email blast or WhatsApp group or any other method, to keep that line of communication open. I think it's important to communicate with your customers, and even in some instances, again, adapt. We've seen people start delivery services. We've seen people do takeout. A lot of restaurants that haven't done it, and they've put the information out there on social media. That's kind of what I'm thinking of.
Okay. All right. Clint, what's your view?
I think 3 things are important when you're communicating through an organization. One, how does what we're going through going to impact the company, right? And that's important because people want to know, what does this mean for the company? Will we be operating? Will we not be operating? Will we be operating differently? Will we be operating from home? Will I have a job tomorrow? How does it impact the company? Secondly, how does it impact me as an employee in the company? What kind of action should I be taking as a result? All right. So as an employee, you want to know that a crisis, does this impact me? Does it impact my department? Does it impact my job? Does it impact the way I come to work? Will it impact my salary? So how does it impact the company? How does it impact me? And then how does it impact the country around me? Those 3 things people need answers to, because it does 1 or 2 things. If those answers are void, they go into panic. They go into uncertainty. They go into worry and frustration. And then they begin to break down. So people have to have those questions answered, because it impacts the way they view the crisis, the way they go through the crisis, and whether they can handle the crisis. So you find that companies that are not able to give people information are normally the companies where the employees don't do well in crisis. For example, if people know that we're going through a crisis and they're just hearing from downstairs, boy, you all hear the company going through something. What is the company going through? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Boy, I don't know. What happened to our jobs? Boy, nobody saying nothing. Yeah. Don't know. It creates panic and worry in an organization. Why? There's a lack of communication, a lack of information. The one thing you don't want to do in a crisis is not have enough information and communication with the people that are impacted by it. Because if you don't give it to them, they begin to worry, they begin to fear, they begin to believe all kinds of things, and they start turning to everybody else's channels and start seeing what's happening to other people's companies. And then they say, oh, it's gonna happen to us. The worst gonna happen to us. So without information, fear sets in. And so it's important to give people information so they know what's going on. Think about it. If we didn't have information about coronavirus, we'd all just think, oh my God, we're all gonna die. We're all just gonna be in our houses forever. We're gonna die. If somebody passes me and I don't have 6 feet, I'm gonna catch coronavirus.
Correct.
Lack of information.
That is so very true. Wow. Wow. Information, it creates empowerment. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Banu?
So, my next question, I was supposed to ask you on what is it that employers should avoid, but I think you've already responded to that. Yeah. So my next question maybe will be, what's the possible way of restoring reputation in times of crisis? So how would you think, in your opinion, how can that be addressed?
You want to go first, Travis, or want me to go?
You go.
Yeah.
I think restoring reputation comes, first of all, by honesty, right? People, there's a certain part of us that says, I can be sensitive and I can be compassionate to what you've gone through if I know the truth, right? So I think the best way to begin a rebuilding reputation damage is by being honest that, listen, something has taken place, something has happened. You're aware of it. We're not going to back down from that. But here is our commitment to you. Here is how we're going to build this back. Honesty and then a plan. You gotta have a plan. You don't have a plan, people stay in doubt and people stay in worry because they're wondering, well, what you gonna do about this now? So being honest to people is one way. And then secondly, having a plan. Here's how we're going to come out of this. Here's what we're going to do as a result of this. When you can give people a plan and lead them through the process, chances are they'll give you another chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to admit that you were wrong. To, you know, however this mistake or however your reputation was damaged, to acknowledge, you know, whatever mistakes may have been made, if that's the case. But you know, yeah, it's integrity, it's honesty, and it's building back that trust, and that's not easy. That is not easy.
Mm-hmm. Trust evolves over time, so yeah, it's very interesting because it's one of those things that you can lose quickly, but it takes you a long time to build, eh?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, you might never get it back.
Politicians do that more than anybody else. Once you've lied to them, no matter how much good you do, people question what you say and what you do because they don't trust you anymore. So it's the hardest thing to get back.
Yeah, it surely is. It surely is. So maybe we'll do one more question and then after that we'll hear from the group. So, you know, in a crisis, I would imagine that you guys have such a difficult job, you know, and one of the things that comes to my mind is this whole decision of knowing perhaps when to communicate and when not to. So let's say you know you've got a story, you've got information that is accurate, but it's not fully complete. You know, how do you make that decision between should I share this or should I not? Should I wait? You know, talk to us a little bit about that.
Listen, that is the toughest thing to do sometimes because when you're a journalist, there's something that you have inside of you that says, I got to go with this scoop. Oh, I got this scoop. I want to go with this scoop. Yeah. There is something that says, I don't want to hold on to this.
Yes.
But sometimes you just got to wait a little longer because sometimes something can break out of it and you holding it and you say, okay, great. I'm glad I held it because something else came out of it. I'll give you a real example, right? I don't know if people have been hearing what's been happening in the news just over the past day or two about this liquor store that's been open and operating involving police officers who've been selling liquor and so forth and whatever have you. And the police, listen, people sent the video to us. And people they sent us a video of the people paying for the liquor. This person went undercover with an undercover camera, going in the store, asking how much is a case of this, a case of that. Everything was on camera. They sent us everything.
Incredible.
And I was like, yes, we can break this story tonight. And I said, okay, Clint, hold off a bit. Because you break this story. We know how things work in this small country. You become a target and it becomes a security risk as well.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? Let's hold off just a bit. And I made that decision in the last hour. I was 5 minutes to going on air. And I said to producers, let's hold off on it. They said, what? I said, just hold off on it. And we did our show on Friday without it. And about that evening, a press release came out from the commissioner of police saying it has come to his attention about an illegal act that took place. He released a whole statement on it. Wow. And I said, boy, yes. Wow. I said, now we can go to the story.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it wouldn't have been us bringing it out. It would be us now saying, here's what the commissioner of police has said. Correct. He's referring to this video. Here's the video. So we no longer become the target. We become a station who's now reporting on something the commissioner has said. Now, people must say, but you weren't the first to break it. The commission broke it first. That's all right. In some cases, being first isn't all the best heated thing. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure at the end of the day, you're still thinking safety-wise, taking
Yes.
every precaution necessary, and bringing the story out, and it will still not lose its sting. The fact is, people want to see this thing actually happening. And we're
Right.
able to show you it's actually happening, but with a statement from the Commissioner of Police. So I think so many times you've got to make a tough call. And that's when experience comes in, eh? Because sometimes young cub reporters will be like, this is my moment, this is my story, I can break it. And you got to say to them, hold off. Let's check and get a response from this person first. Let's get a response from that. Because they're not thinking beyond this story. They just have a breaking story. What they're not thinking is there are consequences that can come as a result of you breaking the story that you may not see right down the line. So my job as your director is who's been in this long enough, who've made mistakes and broken stories before they should have been broken. You learn from it and you recognize that there are sometimes you got to hold on to it and wait to get another angle of it so that you make sure you cover all grounds, particularly when you're dealing with a society where people love to say, we're going to sue you. You're liable for this. So you have to know how to make sure you have all grounds covered before breaking a story, because it could lead you down a road you're not prepared to go down.
And as I hear you say that, I think it's so critically important, because in a crisis, you have emotions that are heightened, right? You know, so now you have a multiplier effect if you don't make the right decision. Travis, I don't know if you want to comment on that, or.
I will just say that, you know, it's important when you have information, especially something that someone gave to you, to fact check it and to get balance, right? Sometimes somebody might dump something on your desk, that a document per se, that is dense. You read it, you try and understand it the best you can. But at the end of the day, you need to understand or have the full context for what it is you're putting out there, because you might not even know why this person put it on your desk. You also have to question the motive of your source sometimes. So it's, you have to, in all things, you have to be very careful. And as Clint said, you know, you don't just simply rush to be first. And you do see some folks who will take that path, and, you know, so that's how you make mistakes. And usually too, sometimes you might have a story that you aren't familiar with, or that you've never seen written before. You know what I mean? Like when I say a type of story, and it happens, right? There are some stories where you're like, oh, I've never seen anyone write like that, or write this, or publish this.
Yeah.
And the golden rule is, if you're not sure, hold it.
Hold it. Yeah.
When in doubt,
Clint
leave it out.
When in
But
doubt,
then,
leave it out.
can I say something? Before you get it out, probably it's already on social media.
And you know why? You know why that is? Because as credible news agencies, if we get it wrong or we make a mistake, we have an obligation to apologize and to correct it, right? They don't. They can get a story out there that's wrong and they don't care, and they find out that it's wrong. They don't have to apologize to anybody. They don't come back and correct it. They don't care. And some people won't even ask them to care. People still believe that version they have out because they're not in an industry where integrity is important. For us, this is more than just a service. This is what we do. So we live by guidelines of having integrity and accuracy. That's important for us to operate as mainstream media. But that's not everybody else's motive. Their motives, they have agenda, they have purposes why they're out there, to push a certain message, to push a certain impression. So they're not caught up in being accurate. They're not caught up in getting it right. They don't care if they make a mistake. Their job is just to push an agenda, right?
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
The worst day of a reporter's life is the day their story's wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't ever want to be in that position.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time. Since we have to hit the 3 o'clock press announcement by the Prime Minister. I think, Wellington, I'll go on to the question from the participants.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I have the first question. In your opinion, so this can be to any one of you. So question to any one of the panelists. In your opinion, should only authorized spokespersons speak during any crisis to avoid misinformation or fake news? So how do we select the authorized spokesperson? How do we pre-screen and train spokesperson for different channels of communication? As people increasingly take up social distancing, social media is an appealing way to stay in contact. But it can also be a source of fake news and bad advice regarding COVID-19. So how would you address that? One of you, maybe.
I think that it's important for an organization to have a communications officer, somebody who is trained and well versed in media, and that really is how you combat that issue. Communicating with your clients, communicating with your staff.
Okay.
Clint?
Yeah, I totally agree with him. You have to have somebody who understands the art of being able to communicate. It shouldn't be anybody. People don't often realize how important a communications officer is. They're very important, particularly for times of crisis. They know how to get the information across palatably. They know how to get it, how to say tough things in a manner that people won't instantly react to shock. They know how to not water it down, but put it in a manner that people can easily digest it, right? And that's important when you have a communication officer versus somebody who say, man, this is how it is. Somebody break in last night and take all the money, all of your accounts empty. Well, what's the best way to say that without just saying it like that, right? And that comes with that's a trained, you have to be trained to do that. People think, oh, I can just be a communications officer. It requires skill. You have to be effectively deliver communication to avoid panic, to avoid people not getting the right information, inaccuracies. You have to say enough without saying too much.
Yeah.
We like that in our field. We like when you say too much, right? But in the field of somebody in business, too much can be detrimental to the company. So knowing exactly how to give the right information without giving too much information is very important.
Yeah, and just to circle back, it is important to have somebody designated as the person communicating, not having a broad spectrum of speakers from one organization, because then you mix your messages, right? You get mixed messages. For instance, in the police, there's only really a handful of people that are authorized to speak to the media. You try and talk to a sergeant or a corporal, and no, it's not gonna work, you know?
Yeah.
Just as an example, you know? And for just to add, you would find that, you know, in a lot of organizations, a lot of the communications people are, you know, former reporters.
Who have that experience, Travis?
Yeah. We'll probably take another question from, is that okay, Wellington, you think?
Yeah, we could do two more. I think we could do two more.
Okay, the next question. Do you find that media literacy shape our perception of reality? Also, is fake news a deliberate attempt to try to discredit a particular source for monetary gains? Or is it constructed mainly because a particular source wants to be the first to report without validating the facts first? So I think the second part is probably would have answered, but look at the first question then.
All of the above for that, regarding fake news. So all of those reasons given are why fake news is disseminated. It is to discredit people. Sometimes people are true, but they say it's fake news to try and discredit what they're saying. That is correct. Monetary gain or constructed mainly because a particular source wants to be the first. Yep. That's why a lot of them put it out there without checking it, just because they heard a tip. So all of those are correct and what contributes to fake news. Do you find that media literacy shape our perceptions of reality? Yes. And that's why the media is so important. Everybody understands that. That's why they try to have access to the media, no matter what form you're in, whether you're in government, private sector, politics, whatever it is. People understand the power of the media because the media does shape people's beliefs and realities about what's happening in life. If they get information from a particular source, that person can say something that is far off the wall. But because that person say it, people will tell you, no, I believe that. He say it's true, I believe it's true. So media plays a very big role in shaping the reality for a lot of people. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, I didn't realize how serious it was until I joined media. You know, I was 22. But no, I agree with Clint. It's vital to our way of life at times. You know, I mean, that's how we get our information. It's how we know what to do in times of crisis. You know, and it keeps us connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think probably I'll take one more question.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah. How do you avoid information overload in times of crisis? I think this is the problem we all face.
Oh, that's easy. Know when to walk away. Our job is to constantly give you information. If we stop giving information, then we stop doing our job. Our job is to constantly give information. Why? Because people will get access to the information at different times. And that's why you have the 24-hour news networks. Why?
Yeah.
Because people will watch it. Some people watch in the afternoon, some watch in the mornings, some get up in the middle of the night to watch news. So it doesn't mean you must watch it from morning, afternoon to night. You have to know when to back away from it and say, okay, this is my time to declutter. I'm turning off the TV. I'm putting down the newspaper. I'm putting away my phone, and I'm just gonna have my time. Because we're gonna always be there. Because people want news at different times. You have to determine when is enough for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who is in the media, that is so hard because this is not a 9 to 5, you know, this is from you wake up to you go to sleep and you're constantly talking to people or reading something. And it is very easy to be overwhelmed with the information, but like, you know, you have to decompress. You have to take time and for yourself.
Yeah. It's so hugely important. There's, in my mind, there's a difference between being informed and being inundated.
Yes.
And I think sometimes in crisis, we inundate ourselves too much.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 5 more minutes. So at this point, we're going to wrap up. So I'll share a few central themes. I really want to say thank you to Travis and Clint. I mean, I quite literally have a page of notes, but I want to just highlight some of the thoughts that I heard. So make sure that news is accurate. Make sure that you fact check. Make sure that it is easily digestible. It's up to date. Make sure that it highlights the story and the spirit of the people. We also talked about needing to have an action plan. What is my role in this? What am I supposed to do? What can I do? Because sometimes individuals want to participate. One of the 2 gentlemen, my learned colleague, said that in a crisis, you always want to make sure that you give information. You don't want to go dark. You don't want to be silent. And you want to control the message, because if you don't control it, someone else will. We talked about the difference between being informed and inundated. We talked about how social media is a double-edged sword and how they're playing in our playground. And we can't take them out of the playground. So what we have to do is try and ring fence them as best as we can and let citizens know that it's better to come and play on our side of the playground because we have a better side than the social media folks do.
I like the way you put it, Wellington.
for various reasons. And then taking it more to the corporate side, both gentlemen concluded on the fact that corporate communications need to say what is going on with the company, what is going on with me as an employee, and what is going on in the country. I'll now hand it over to Travis just to wrap us up and talk to us a little bit about The Guardian. Then we'll hear from Clint, we'll hear from Banu, and then I'll conclude. So over to you, Travis.
Thank you so much for having me be a part of this conversation. If you're looking for accurate and informed news, you can visit The Guardian on our Facebook page. We also have a Twitter page, and we print Monday to Friday.
All right. Thank you, Travis. Over to you, Clint.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you. What we're doing here at Eyewitness News is just trying to present to you quality news and information that you need, covering all grounds, all sides, giving it to you 21st century technology. You can see here we started a limited series, 5-minute limited series that runs through May 8th. All of our reporters and journalists are focusing on various things. On Mondays, we talk about diversification of the economy with Theo Seeley. On Tuesdays, we have a special report with Jessica Brown on feeding ourselves a new reality. Wednesdays, Matthew Moxie does a special feature on casting our nets to the other side, talking about fishing. On Thursdays, Chanel does education, the changing face, getting used to the new norm of educating yourselves online. On Fridays is what's happening in the sporting community with our sports reporter, Randy Smith. So we're trying to keep people abreast as we get through coronavirus with where is our country going in these various important areas. So continue to watch and stay tuned to Eyewitness News online and of course on cable television and Flow TV.
Absolutely. It's a good lineup, Clint. And Banu, over to you.
All right. Okay. what do you have on the screen? Okay, I've given you a quick overview of One Ultra Foundation. That's where I'm with. So just a quick overview. I've shared with you what One Ultra is, but just to add on the five pragmatic areas that we are looking at One Ultra Foundation: pathway to wellness, partners in education, economic development, environmental sustainability, culture and heritage development. So look out for more updates from One Ultra Foundation. We'll be launching our brand new virtual campus online platform. A lot of courses are coming online within the next couple of days. Probably by next week, we're going to launch the online platform. And Wellington, you'd probably bring up the next flyer that I have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just a quick announcement on our next webinar that's coming up. So this is for all corporates. You may find it very interesting. The essentials of brand building. So we have the Nikki Settleton, the brand strategist and a consultant. So she will be, she's working with us with One Ultra Foundation on this particular project. So it's a free online webinar. So Nikki will walk through with you on the essential components needed to build a successful brand in today's digital marketplace.
Mhm.
So we can send the flyer to everyone to have a look. She has worked with some of the major brands here in the Bahamas. So it'll be interesting to hear what she's got to say. That's on the 24th of April between 2 to 3 p.m. So look out for the session, which I'll be hosting together with Nikki. Yes,
absolutely. And I see that we are at time, so I will be incredibly brief.
Yeah.
WHI and One Eleuthera Foundation would like to thank you for your time. I hope that you gleaned from this presentation. And we will also make the recording available and we will send it out to all of you within the next few days. On the screen is our upcoming 4th event in the Corona Collaboration Culture Series. We'll be talking about mental health and the difference between being on lockdown and not feeling like you are locked up.
Out.
2 different things. So stay tuned.